The following segment is brought to you in partnership with Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. I saw this really sad statistic out of the city of Tacoma. You know, it's not just Seattle, it's dealing with a crime crisis. There's a lot of areas in Washington state, including the city of Tacoma. And Cairo 7 had this article, this story talking about how half of Tacoma's homicide victims are under the age of 18. Half of Tacoma's homicide victims are under the age of 18. And I think we all know and knew that this phenomenon was starting to get very serious. You know, we've heard stories about young people doing armed carjackings, and we've heard stories about young people. There was that, I think it was in Pierce County, where these boys held these girls up at gunpoint to steal their sandwiches. Just this insane level of violence and lack of empathy from kids. And we also know that there's a gang issue in Tacoma, and that's not new to Tacoma. There's been a gang issue for a long time. But to be in this position where right now half of the city's homicide victims for the year have been under the age of 18 is desperately sad. And it goes back to a theme we've been discussing a lot on the show, which is there's just something wrong with this generation that's coming up in this country and in this world, where I think that they've had, they have an inability to form interpersonal healthy relationships. And that has led them to commit these acts of violence without really any regard for what they're doing. And I'll talk more about that in a moment, but I was actually really impressed with the Cairo 7 story on this, because too often when we talk about young people shooting each other, it's a gun problem. Get the guns off the street, ban the guns. The reason I'm impressed with it is the story wasn't fear-mongering over guns. The story was about getting programs for these youth to help them with what's going on in their brains and in their life. And that's where this has to start. That's where this has to begin. And that is the narrative that we have to change in the media. We can't continue to buy into this democratic narrative that they keep pushing on gun violence, gun violence, gun violence. We have a youth violence problem in our country, in our state, and it starts in the brain, and it starts at home, and it starts in schools. And I hate to put it this way, but I think that we have, no, I don't hate to put it this way. I think we have a generation of youth that has been coddled to an extent in school and at home, that they're not used to conflict, that they're not used to working through conflict in a positive, productive way, and that they think settling conflict in these ways is somehow normal. Like, I think one time maybe they settled a conflict through violence. That seemed to work for them. They don't know any other way to settle it. And so that's what they've continued to do. And that, of course, goes way beyond gang violence. Gang violence has a lot of other implications there. But I was impressed with this Cairo 7 story because it didn't fearmonger over guns, focused on the issue at hand. And then they talked to this Safe Streets Tacoma. And they said, look, it's about youth mental health, which I do believe it is. Helping young people heal from the wounds they're dealing with right now, which they brought up the pandemic. I do think the pandemic for young people was really hard. Do I think it's leading young people to pick up guns and go shoot fellow gang members? No. But I do think that the pandemic contributed to this mental health crisis that we're seeing in kids. Definitely don't think it helped. But one thing she said from Safe Streets Tacoma, she said, this isn't a competition about who can do it best. We all have to work together and collaborate on the solution. And that's so true. And that's something that we've proven and our politicians have proven incapable of doing. I mean, we look at what has been prioritized in Olympia when it comes to public safety. They're about to ban so-called assault rifles, et cetera. That's not going to fix this issue. That's not going to fix the fact that half of the homicide victims in Tacoma are under the age of 18. And I would just like, for once, you have, I would say that every lawmaker in Olympia, if you asked them, do you care about our kids and the health and safety of our kids, they would say yes. But when you ask them, how do we deal with the fact that you have all these kids under the age of 18 who are killing each other, who are hurting each other, who are throwing their lives away by giving into this criminal element at such a young age, they have such vastly different ideologies when it comes to how to deal with that. And we have to be able to overcome that. We have to get past these talking points of, oh, it's a gun crisis, and work together on it. And I really hope that for the sake of our kids, for lawmakers who would say, yes, absolutely, I care about our kids. Of course, I care about the safety of our kids, that they can put their ideologies aside, they can put their talking points aside, and they can get to the bottom of what's really going on here. It's a mental health issue. This should be, to me, one of our top priorities as a country. There is something going on with this generation of kids, and we are obligated to address that issue with urgency and to leave politics out of it for the sake of society, for the sake of future generations, and for the sake of the kids that everyone says they care about. It's time to prove that you actually care about those kids. This segment has been brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org.